In this video, I'll be giving you a tutorial on how to use Firebase in your Thunkable apps. Firebase is a service provided by Google for creating real-time databases. In the past, we've used databases in our Thunkable apps using LocalDB, which is a component built into Thunkable, but Firebase is a little bit different. And what's special about Firebase is that it allows us to have persistent storage. And what persistent storage means is that the information that we save to our database will never go away or disappear. It's persistent. It'll always be there. So when our user uses our app, all the data that they have saved will still be in the database from the last time that they used the app. This is how almost all the apps that we use every day function. For instance, when you open up Instagram on your phone, you still have all the same followers and posts and likes and story highlights and the same bio. Everything is the same as when you opened up Instagram yesterday. All the data is persistent. It's being stored persistently. This kind of storage is really useful for more complex and data-driven apps. So, let's get started learning how to use Firebase. The first thing that we need to do is set up and log in to Firebase, set up a project with Firebase and log in. You can get started by going to firebase.google.com and that'll bring you to this homepage. And to get started, we're going to hit this button that says Get Started. From there, Firebase may have you log in using your Google account, so go ahead and do that. I'm already logged in, so it just brought me straight to my console. You are more than welcome to use a personal Google account or your Don's Google account. Either one will work. It doesn't really matter. So once you're logged in, it'll bring you to this console page that'll show you all of the projects that are associated with your Google account. You can see I already have a couple projects sitting here, but if this is your first time using Firebase, you won't have any projects yet. That's totally all right. Your screen will look a little bit different than mine. So to get started, we need to first create a new project that will be like the housing for our database. So I'm going to click on this Add Project button, and this will begin creating my project. The first thing I need to do is give it a name. Again, the name doesn't really matter that much as long as it makes sense to you. So I'm just going to call it Test Project. It's fine. And then I'll hit Continue. The second thing it's going to ask me is if I want to enable Google Analytics for my project. Google Analytics is a way for us to get data about our database, so we can know like what kinds of things people are saving and when and where. For the purposes of our class, we don't really need Google Analytics. Maybe people who are using Firebase in a more professional environment would like to use Google Analytics, but for the purposes of our class, it's not really necessary. So I'm just going to go ahead and disable it and then hit Create Project. And then we just gotta wait a couple minutes for the project to create itself. Great. And once the project is ready, you will see this Continue button. Let's go ahead and click that. Okay. So now that we've got our project created, it's bringing you to this console page. You can see the name of your project here and also up here in the little drop down. If you have multiple projects, you'll be able to see all of them here. But if you have just the one, that's fine. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create our real-time database as a part of this project. In order to do that, we're going to go over here to the left-hand side on this panel and click Real-Time Database. Great. Now I'll bring you to the real-time database screen. You can see up here that we're still in the correct project. So I'm going to hit Create Database. And then we have a couple of things we need to decide. First is the location. I'm going to go ahead and choose United States. Hit Next. And the second option is if we want to start in locked mode or test mode. Essentially what this means is in locked mode, we get to choose who can read and write data to our database. So people will have to sign on. They'll have to use like their email address and a password in order to put any data in the database or get any data from our database. This is great for security and privacy in databases, but for our purposes, we're just going to go ahead and use test mode, which means that anyone who's anyone can read and write data to our database. Now, if we were using Firebase for a more professional and more private purpose, this would be not good because that means that anyone can come in and just delete the whole database, or add whatever nonsense they want to the database. But for our purposes in this class, it's all non-professional, very chill, so we can just use the test mode, which allows anyone to read and write. And you'll see it gives you a warning about that, but that's fine. So we're going to go ahead and click Enable. Perfect. And that'll bring you to your newly created database. So you'll see there's a couple tabs up here. We'll go ahead and walk ourselves through them. So the first one is the Data tab, and this tells you your actual database. So in this box here will be all of the data that's saved to your database. Right now there is nothing in the database, so that's why it just says null. Null means that it's empty. But as we start adding things to the database, then you'll see it all appear here. The second tab is the rules. This is exactly what we were just deciding about, if it's going to be people are allowed to read or write to our database. So if you need to change those rules, you can change it in this code here, but for us, we're just going to leave it the way it is. And then got a couple other things about backups, if you want to be able to back up your data, and some other usage metrics that we won't be using. So let's go ahead and go back to here. So now that we have our database set up, let's go ahead and get this new project and database connected to our Thunkable project. So I'm going to go ahead and go over to Thunkable, and I'm going to create a new app just like we normally do. I'm going to call it Firebase Test, and I'm just going to give it a just testing category or whatever, it doesn't matter. Hit create. All right. So now we need to connect our new Firebase database to this Thunkable project. And the way we're going to do that is by adding a Firebase component. So if we scroll down in our Add Components section near the bottom, you'll see under the Data section this component called Realtime DB, and it has a little Firebase logo on it. This is what we're going to use in order to connect our app to our database. I'm going to drag one of those in, and you'll see it's an invisible component, so nothing showed up on the screen, but did pop up down here underneath, and it's in the invisible components section of our app tree. And we need to edit some settings, so I'm going to click on this little link that says Go to Firebase Settings. Great. You can also get to, and that'll pop up all of our app settings here on the side. You can get to that in the same way by going to the name of your app up here in the app tree and clicking this little gear icon. All right, so if we scroll down in our app settings here, you'll see this little section for Firebase settings. And we need two things. We need an API key, and we need a database URL. So let me go ahead and show you where you can get those two pieces of information. First, we're going to get the database URL. So back over here on Firebase, we're on the Data tab of our real-time database, and you'll see here, and like the heading of our database, this is our URL. So I'm just going to click and copy this, and that will be our database URL. All right, and then the second piece of information we need is the API key. You can find the API key by going back over to the project overview. So we're going to click on that. And that'll bring us to this page again. And we need to go ahead and connect our Thunkable app to this project. So I'm going to do that by adding an app to my Firebase. You'll see it gives you a couple options for Apple, Android, Web, and a thing called Unity. For our purposes on Thunkable, we're always going to use Web. So I'm going to click on Web here. And this is allowing me to add an app to my Firebase project. And you're going to click here to tell it what app it is. It doesn't really matter what you call this as long as you know what it means. But I'm going to name it the same thing as I did on Thunkable. So Firebase Test is what I called it. Firebase Test. And I hit Register App. Great. And once our app is registered, you'll see that it pops up with this huge block of code. Don't worry, we don't need to do much with this. We just need the API key out of this piece of code. So you'll see right here is a section that says API key : and then it has a whole bunch of letters and numbers afterwards. This is our API key. So we're going to go ahead and select everything, all these letters and numbers that are in between the quotation marks. We don't need the quotation marks, just the letters and numbers and dashes. And I'm going to go ahead and copy that. And then I'm going to paste that as my API key. And that's it. That's all we need. Now the Thunkable app and our Firebase are connected. So let's go ahead and see if it works. So I'm going to click on this Continue to Console button. And that'll bring me back to the project overview page. And I'm going to click on my real-time database so I can see what's going on here. Okay. Our database is still empty. It says null. So let's go ahead and try adding information to our database. So what I want to be able to do is just have the user type something into a text input, hit a submit button, and then that'll just add it to our database. So the only components I need for that is a text input and a button. Great. I'm just going to rename this button real quick to be our submit button. Submit. That. Okay. Now let's take a look at the blocks that we need in order to make this work. So I want everything to be saved to my Firebase database whenever I click on the submit button. So I'm going to use a when submit button.click event handler. And I need to click over here to my real-time DB. And I'm going to use this purple function block that says call real-time DB to save. That'll allow us to save a new piece of information to our database. Great. We need two pieces of information, a key and a value. So let's go ahead and give it a key and a value. I want to say the key is just a piece of text. I'm just going to make it say hello. Doesn't really matter. And then I'm going to make my value my text input text. Oops. Great. So whenever we click on the submit button, we're going to call our real-time database to save a key value pair. And the key is always going to be hello, and the value will be whatever the user typed into our text input box. So let's go ahead and test this. I'm going to hit live test, and I'm actually going to test it on my phone because Firebase works a lot better when you're using it on your phone rather than on your computer. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And as you type something into your text input box, you will now see that information pop up in your real-time database. So you'll see that key is hello, and in the text box, I typed in the word world, and that is my value. And that's how real-time databases work in Firebase.